I'm in the shower. I've got soap all over my hair. I get it fixed. I look over and it's Old Faithful. I mean, there is water pouring out of the ground, just right out of the ground. I mean, a ton of it, like a spout of water. And I immediately, because I'm not known as Mr. Handyman, my kids over here are laughing at me, but you know, my Indian name is I write the checks. All right. And I usually just find somebody to fix these kinds of things.
And that's just not what I do. I'm a poet and a prophet. So I immediately went over and I tried to put my foot on this hole. My foot just went flying off like this because the water was coming out of there. I mean, thousands of gallons. There's a little water meter right in front of the house, and I went over and I looked at the water meter. It was going like this. I could just see the water bill when it was going to be coming in. So I went back and I knocked on the door. My wife said, and you know, she's back there. She's saying, what in the world did you do? What happened? Well, I reached in where that was happening, and I happened to just bring this over with me tonight. I brought this. This is it. It's a true story. I grabbed this, and it came right out of the ground. The water was, that was Old Faithful blowing up there. I'm standing there, and my wife opens the door with soap all over her hair, standing there. I said, what did I say, honey? Honey, I don't know what happened. I don't know what happened. I was just standing there. Well, Hercules, she said, in my next life, I'm gonna marry a real man, which really got to me. Instead of a poet, I'm gonna write a real man who can fix things. But all the time, what was that? All the time this thing was happening, there was a part of me that was watching this, truly. Oh, and my wife said the very same thing that I said. I'm going to laugh at this. There's going to come a time when I'm going to laugh at this. Because then we got on the telephone and we called the water company. It was a holiday, so nobody's going to come out. So he's giving instructions to my wife, who's standing there with the soap all over, no clothes on how to turn the water off to the house. It's like in front of the water meter. I had to reach down in, and there were 10 billion ants in there in this place. So I tried to get it with a pair of pliers, and he told me, you have to have a special tool. Of course, I have no tools at all. I finally got this thing, turned off, and the plumber came out on a holiday. I asked the plumber, I couldn't believe the bill he handed me. I said, my God. I said, my physician doesn't charge me that much. He said, when I was a physician, I didn't charge that much either. I'm a plumber now. That's why I changed. But all the time, this whole story and all this entire thing was happening. I had a sense of watching it, of observing it, of noticing it, of becoming the witness. And I think one of the things I learned from listening to so many of these great teachers and these great people is how to become the witness to your life. How to not so much identify with the stuff that is going on. You're always going to chop wood. There's always going to be problems. We're never going to end marital strife. There's always going to be things that we're going to disagree on. We're not going to end financial difficulties. Struggles that we go through, we're not. Those kinds of things are just a part of the human condition. We work, we carry water, we chop wood, we do these kinds of things. But it's not like you're going to find enlightenment. There's a Talopa, who is a 10th century Sufi, who said that enlightenment means to have a mind that is open to everything but attached to nothing. So open to everything but not attached. Detached from all of the outcome, from all of the stuff that's going on out there. And if you can learn how to cultivate just that one simple thing, to start to watch, to start to notice, to start to become the observer in your life. And even though you can't separate them, there is a oneness to all of it, of course. But when you start to stand back, and I was saying, you really are doing something pretty silly right here. And you're getting it, and it's like, poor Wayne, what a slob he is. I mean, he can't even fix a simple thing to it. I mean, I realize this, but I'm able to watch it and laugh about it. And as you're able to do this, you start to cultivate more of an attitude of, there's more to me than the pettiness that is going to be the problems that I'm going to encounter. And in our culture, in our world, we see an enormous amount of rage. We see people who are so identified with all of the stuff out there that has happened, and with so many people who don't know how to go here and get quiet, get peaceful. One of the people that I wrote about in this book was Blaise Pascal. Blaise Pascal was a great philosopher, but he was also a scientist. You had to remember Pascal's law, and you had to read about pressure and learn about all of that stuff in your physics class or in your chemistry classes or whatever. But he was also a great thinker. He said all of man's troubles stem from his inability to sit quietly in a room alone. We don't know how to get quiet. Well, we don't know how to get peaceful. We don't know how to go within and summon that force within us, our connection to our source. Because so many of us are separated from our source through the ego, through this identification with all of the stuff that's out there happening. And so many of these teachers spoke about this quality of the soul, this quality of spirit, this quality of being more than just what you notice, more than what you observe. So to me, there's something called mastery, living at the highest level. Many of these people that I admire so deeply that I wrote about and speak about here today had qualities in their life that reflect something called mastery. And this thing called mastery has in it what I think of as 4 pathways. I was speaking in Chattanooga, Tennessee a couple of years ago. A man who brought me there to give a talk for the United Way there, to raise funds, handed me a book at dinner. He said, "I'll read this book. It's a book that I think you'll get a lot out of. It's a golf book." I said, "Golf? I don't golf. I don't know anything about golf. I'm not interested." He said, "No, it's not about golf. It's something I think you'll really value. It's called The Legend of Bagger Vance." So I took it home, and I started reading it, and I got really intrigued with it. It takes place in 1931. It's a novel that takes place back in 1931. It's a fictional kind of story of Bobby Jones and Walter Hagen and another golfer. The 2 of the greatest golfers who ever lived, who were having this golf tournament someplace in the South, and the caddy was giving advice. Bobby Jones was asking the question of the caddy, who was really like this enlightened master. It's sort of a takeoff on one of the Hindu scriptures called the Bhagavad Gita, which means Song of the Lord. And it's the ancient story of Arjuna, the great warrior, on the battlefield, getting ready to do battle. He's lined up there to face another man, and all of these people are going to be killed. And he begins to talk to Krishna, who is God in the Hindu faith. Krishna appears to Arjuna in the form of his charioteer, and he hands him these 18 chapters in this dialogue that you could read in an afternoon but study for a lifetime. Gandhi said that whenever I find myself struggling with anything in my life, I go to the Gita, and I read the Gita, and the Gita always provides me with the answer. I was handed the Gita, the Bhagavad Gita, when I graduated from high school by a relative. I carried it with me for 10 to 12 years. Wherever I would move, I would carry it with me. Finally, about 1984, after it moved many times, I'd pick this thing up. I'd say, "Bhagavad, go." What is this? I don't even know how to say it. Finally, one day in the 1980s, I decided to take it with me when we left for the summer. I read it in several days, and my response was, it's about time they wrote something like this, even though it's thousands of years old. And you see, when the student is ready, the teacher appears. I wasn't ready until then. When I was ready, it was very powerful for me. So, the legend of Bagger Vance is about this caddy. He is asked by Bobby Jones the question, "How do I master the perfect swing?" He just couldn't figure out a way to get it. He wanted to, just once in his life, have the perfect swing that he knew he was in harmony with. It is explained to him like this. There are really 4 pathways. I call them pathways. But there are 4 things that you have to go through to reach this level of mastery. And this isn't about the perfect swing, folks. This is about virtually everything in your life. The first pathway is called discipline. Discipline is when you use the body, when you train the body to do what you want it to do. If you want to get good at something, you have to practice. It doesn't matter what it is that you do. Everybody who's really a master, who's really good at things, goes to practice, whether it's playing basketball, playing bridge, or anything that you do. The second pathway is called the pathway of wisdom. This is when you begin to apply what you have disciplined yourself to. You begin to apply the thoughts to the discipline. So, if you're going out to learn how to play tennis, which is something that I do, you want to learn how to hit a backhand. You first go out and you just learn how to hit a backhand. You hit thousands of backhands. Then you begin to realize in order to play tennis, there are a lot of things that you have to apply. You begin to practice. You practice the swing, how you hold your racket, overheads, drop shots, serving. You learn all of the rules of the game and how to get your opponent out of position and so on. You apply the intellect, and this is what we mean by education. When we send our children to school, what we are really saying to them is, get some discipline and use your head. We want them to be disciplined. We want them to use their head, get their grades, and get through. This is basically what we mean by education, by formal education. It is someone who is disciplined and has used their head, but it has very little to do with mastery, which is that highest level. It's that place that you get to when you absolutely have a knowing that you are at one with your own purpose in life. The third pathway is a pathway that's called unconditional love. He was talking to this golfer about unconditional love, saying that if you're not doing what you love and loving what you do, then you'll never reach mastery in your life. I'd like to say to everybody watching this program, and I know it sounds simple, and you might even be saying, yeah, well, that's easy for you to say, but you don't know about the conditions of my life. You don't know about my mortgages, and you don't know about all of the things that have gone on in my life. I'd like to suggest to you that you remember that when you put your attention on what you don't want or what you can't do, what you can't do is what you will continue to manifest and materialize into your life. You have to learn how to shift your attention off of what you don't want and can't do onto what you do want and can do. That means changing your thought pattern. I'd like to say to everyone watching, if you're not doing what you love and loving what you do, you have 2 choices to make. 1 is to change what you're doing, or 2 is to change how you feel about what you're doing. That's something that you can do in an instant.